Hello and welcome to my mid-year wrap-up. I am currently recording this on the last day of June, so I feel like I'm not going to finish any books between now and tomorrow when the second half of the year begins. I've seen lots of people doing like their mid-year wrap-ups already in June, but in my head, June is the 6th month, right? So like I have to include all the books I read in June. I don't know how many of you are interested in book data and reading data. I honestly didn't know that I was until recently, but I have made some pie charts on my reading habits so far in 2023, and I wanted to share those with you before diving in to the mid-year book tag. First, I think it's important to know that I read 29 books so far this year. Nothing crazy, but I think it's a respectable amount. I read between 4 and 7 books every month. I have recently become a hardcore fantasy girly. Like, it's honestly shocking how much fantasy I've been reading. Here's a chart explaining the genres that I've read in the last 6 months. 69% of the books I have read have been fantasy. And I promised myself that I was going to read less fantasy for the last half of the year because I know a lot of you also are not fantasy girlies, but I have been failing. I used to be a really big thriller girl and like only read thrillers, but I have only read one thriller so far this year, bringing that to 3.4% in thrillers. And I'm also sure some of the fantasy books I read could have been considered romance as well. I only picked like what the one big genre was for each of the books for this breakdown. And I did read a surprising amount of memoirs. I'm impressed at that. When it comes to what I have rated books, I have actually read mostly 5-star reads, but I would say that that is because I've been reading a lot of really long series this year, like A Court of Thorns and Roses, basically every book Sarah J. Maas has ever written. So I knew that I was going to like those books going into it, which is why I think it's so 5-star heavy. I've rated about 40% of books 5 stars. I've also rated about 36% of books 3 stars, 20% of books 4 stars, 4% of books 2 stars, and 1% of books 1 stars. Because I did read a 1-star book. I feel like that math isn't mathing, but I'm not going to check it. When it comes to source type, most of the books I've been reading have been physical hard copies of books, at about 59%. 17% of books have been ebooks, and 24% of books have been audiobooks. And when it comes to where I have got these books from, I have got a respectable 17% of books out of the library, 24% of books from Audible, which feels like it doesn't count because I have so many credits to use up that I have just gotten over the years and forgot about. 3% of books were gifted, and 55% of books were books that I personally bought. Now I can't remember what this tag is called, but it is like a mid-year book tag that people do that I've stumbled across, and I thought I would join in on that. Something about book crack? I don't know what that means, but I thought that I would join in. So let's answer some questions. Question number 1 is, what is the best book you have read this year? And I feel like this is just a fair place to talk about all of my 5-star reads. Starting with A Court of Wings and Ruin. This is actually my favorite book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, which I read at the start of this year. I thought it was so good. That series is really what got me into fantasy, and now I have been such a little fantasy girl. How many times can I say fantasy girly? But I've been really into fantasy for the last few months, and it has been so fun to read the genre. It has just been so interesting. My second 5-star read is A House of Sky and Breath, which is part of the Crescent City duology so far, but I think it's going to be more than that, by also Sarah J. Maas. So interesting, and I'm sure a lot of you know what the big twist is at the end of that book, but that is the reason that I gave this 5 stars, because it was so interesting to see all of her works be kind of tied together. And then I also rated 4 books from the Throne of Glass series 5 stars. Crown of Midnight, Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, and Kingdom of Ash. I hear a lot of people say that the Throne of Glass series is the best series by Sarah J. Maas. Even though I gave so many books 5 stars in that series, I feel like I actually enjoyed A Court of Thorns and Roses better. I don't know why. I feel like just maybe the world was really immersive and I just got sucked right in. Or maybe it was that it was the first fantasy series that I've read in forever, but oh my gosh, I loved that series. And then also a 5-star read was From Blood and Ash. These are all fantasy books. But I will say, I read that book and thought, oh my god, this is going to be my new favorite fantasy series. This is so good, so interesting. It's about vampires, and I was so excited. And then immediately starting book 2, thought, and didn't like it, and I think only gave it like 3 stars, 2 or 3 stars. And then I'm currently reading the 3rd book in the series and I'm still not loving it. So it starts out strong, but I'm a little disappointed with the rest of the series. What is the best sequel I've read so far this year? So I'm going to say 2. So I'm going to say Kingdom of Ash, which is the last book in the Throne of Glass series. I cried reading it. If you saw my video that went up last week, oh my gosh, I was so invested in this series. If you want my full thoughts on the Throne of Glass series, I kind of cover that in my last video, which was a reading vlog, so you could check that out. And I will also say again, A Court of Wings and Ruin. This was my favorite book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. I just thought it was like chef's kiss. Perfect. I just loved it. Next question is a new release you haven't read yet. That's definitely Fourth Wing, and I am so sorry that this is so fantasy heavy. It's an epic fantasy about an elite school for dragon riders. I am having so much trouble getting my hands on this book, but I have ordered one that is coming sometime in July, so I'm very excited to read that. And when it comes to my most anticipated read for the second half of the year, this is where I tell you that I actually don't pay attention to like books being released and stuff, and I don't care about how new a book is when I'm going to read it usually, so I actually am not anticipating any books. I could not tell you a single book that is coming out in the second half of this year. I had 3 biggest disappointments. One was Fairy Tale by Stephen King. I hated that book. It was a 2-star read. I listened to the audiobook and it was like a 24-hour book and it was just so disappointing. It follows a teenager. For the first half of the book, he befriends an elderly neighbor who's like this old crank that has no one in his life. Second half of the book, he's in this mystical world, and I was actually really invested in the first half of the book. I thought the friendship aspect was really interesting. I loved the dog. I just thought it was so cute. Really enjoyed that. Did not enjoy the fantasy part, which you think would be the opposite because I'm so into fantasy right now, but no, I did not enjoy it. It was just such a slow go. I was not at all wrapped up into like the fantastical world at all, just not interested in it, and I found it very predictable. 2 was The Fake by Zoe Whittall. I know some people have liked this actually and have heard me say it was my 1-star read of the year so far and are like, oh my gosh, I thought it was so good. Not for me. Maybe I am lacking like the emotional intelligence and depth needed to read that book, but I just did not find it really did much plot-wise. I don't know. So it is about a con artist, kind of, but I don't even know if she realizes she's a con artist. She just lies all the time. A compulsive liar who like says she has cancer and all of these things, and it's just, I don't know, it's just not that interesting. These 2 people meet her and then it's following like, I don't know. I can't even tell you what it's about. I just did not like it. And another big disappointment was Daisy Jones and the Six. I feel like people are going to be so mad at me for saying that, but I actually didn't really like this book. It is my least favorite of all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. I wanted to read it before watching the show, and then I disliked the book so much that I didn't even bother watching the show, which really says something. I don't know, I just wasn't as into it as I thought it would be, and it was so, in my opinion, overhyped. It wasn't for me. I did like how quick it was though. It was nice that it was a quick read, but I think it was oversold to me. The biggest surprise for me was Lessons in Chemistry. I didn't know what to expect going into it. I had just seen it recommended by other people online, and it was such a nice surprise. I thought it was just like so cute and interesting, and I just realized that I should be holding up the books I'm talking about. Anyway, Lessons in Chemistry, it takes place in the 50s and 60s, follows a female chemist in a time where women's place was very much in the home, and then she becomes kind of a star. It's very interesting. I thought it was a great read, and there's a lot of like feminism in it, and it was just great. My new favorite author, it's going to have to be Sarah J. Maas, just because I was introduced to her in December of last year, so pretty new to me, but then I ended up reading every single one of her books, so that just shows how much I liked her, so I feel like she has to get that spot. My newest fictional crush. So I hate to break it to everybody, but I do not really get crushes on characters. I don't know why. I don't. But if I had to pick some, I would pick Manon from the Throne of Glass series. She is a like warrior, witch, queen, just amazing. I love her. I really enjoyed the character of Charlie in the book Every Summer After. I don't know, there was just something about the way that he was written that I just found very enjoyable. He was very cheeky and fun. And I'm an Asriel girly when it comes to A Court of Thorns and Roses. And then I see now that there is a question saying my favorite characters, and I actually didn't write any, but I would definitely just say those three again, because it's not really like a crush I have on them. I'm also a lesbian, so I definitely do not have a crush on the two guys. A book that made me cry was definitely Kingdom of Ash. I was so attached to the characters by the end after it being such a long, epic series. I mean, it was so huge. I think it's 8 books. I was so invested in all of them that by the end I was just like sobbing finishing it. A book that made me happy, I'm going to say Every Summer After by Carly Fortune, until the twist. I really liked this book. It was such a cute, fun read, like the perfect summer book. It takes place in 2 time periods. So one is when this girl is a teenager. So she goes to Barry's Bay, has this cottage there. There's these 2 boys next door, becomes friends with them, dates one of them, and it follows like their 6 years of summers together. And then in the future, we have her going back to that small town because there was a death, and then she's trying to like kind of rekindle the romance with him. So it's kind of like strangers to friends, friends to lovers, and then like a second chance romance maybe. So I really enjoyed all of it until like the last few chapters when we get the big twist on why they broke up, and then I was just left with a horrible taste in my mouth. I hated the twist and I was like, ugh, hate it. So it made me not like the book as much. I feel like if the twist had been something different, I would have just loved this book, but no. It made me happy till it didn't. The most beautiful book I've bought. I think as of right now, this book, the Atlas 6, I haven't read yet, is the only book I've actually purchased. I am currently working on my TBR, so I think every other book I've read this year I had already bought, or it was a book my wife bought, which I feel like doesn't count. So this is the only book I've bought. And when it comes to books that I want to read this year for the rest of the year, my thrillers. I have like so many thrillers that I need to read that are all definitely really good books. It's just I've been so into fantasy that I've really neglected my thrillers, which is like my bread and butter typically. I'm a big thriller lover, so I'm very excited to start reading thrillers again. So I'm just saying all of the thrillers that I have on my bookshelf I want to read. So that's it. I don't know how to end this video. I'm going to say I hope you liked my insights. I mean, I feel like I didn't say anything that deep. Thanks for watching. I'll be back here with another video next Saturday. I am posting every Saturday at noon on this channel. I also have a TikTok and I have an Instagram if you want to check either of those things out, or if you're really into YouTube. Me and my wife have a YouTube channel together where we share our life with our twin boys. So there's also that if you want to check me out there. I try to post twice a week on that account. So there's a lot of videos you can watch from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you back here next week. Bye!